Hello, everybody. This is Ryan,
This is Avery.
and we are from the Frame by Frame King Crimson podcast, and you are listening to Pods Like Us.
Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv, and this time I am joined by Ryan Lane and Avery Desmond from Frame by Frame, an analysis of King Crimson. How are you both?
Doing really well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, and thank you both for being here.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good too.
Good.
Yeah,
you,
thanks for
Avery.
having us.
Thank you. How were you both introduced to podcasting then?
So I didn't really get into podcasting until I think it was, podcast listening to them until a friend of mine introduced me to this podcast known as Chapo's Trap House. It's a political podcast, and I won't go deep into the contents because, politics are an iffy thing to talk about. But I became a big fan of theirs, still am, and just started listening to a bunch of other podcasts and just got interested in the whole medium of just talking into a microphone and people listening. I found that to be very fascinating. And then there were people around me saying, hey, you should do something like this because you talk a lot. So I was like, so I thought about it and I was like, it'd be interesting to do, but I didn't want to do it by myself because that would have been boring. And I was like, oh, how do I want to do this podcast or whatever? So I asked Avery to help me out, and I found this other podcast. I might be jumping the gun a little bit, but I found this one where they're going through the Jethro Tull discography one song at a time, and it's called Told Me.
Yeah, and so that was what gave us the idea. I remember you telling me about it, and I said like I'm not much of a podcast person myself, but I said if there was one about King Crimson, I'd listen to it or I'd check it out. And then Ryan said, why don't we do that? And I was like, yeah, sure. So that was in August and we started in September.
And what I found interesting real quick is that I actually Googled if there were any other King Crimson podcasts. And to my little research, I didn't find any others. So, I mean, I highly doubt we're technically the first, but at least from what I saw, it was not a very tapped market. So I didn't just want to do another podcast about a band that has 1,000 already. That just would have been kind of boring to do, I think.
It's interesting because a lot of progressive bands and experimental artists, you'll find that there's not that many actual shows about them. And I'm really surprised because I thought, especially King Crimson, because they're the originators of it. You would have thought that they would be, as we say in the UK, 10 a penny. You'd think they'd be all over the place, but they're not.
Yeah, I think it's just because their music doesn't appeal to everybody. Though I've been a King Crimson fan for over 10 years now, and I've seen their popularity rise greatly due to the internet and online music forums. So I think they've gotten a lot more popular now, but they're never going to be one of the huge bands. They're a band that if you start getting into the know, if you start diving more below the surface level, you'll see them, but they don't come off as a surface level band. to me.
Yeah, it's very rare that I find anyone in like outside of the internet who knows what I'm talking about when I say anything about King Crimson. Like I've mentioned the podcast like offhand, and I had one person one time say, "Oh, I think I've heard of King Crimson," but they knew like this was like an Uber driver. He knew like nothing about them. He just heard the name somewhere.
So you've never heard the phrase like, "Oh yeah, my dad really likes them."
With my boyfriend, one of the first things I asked him when we met was, "Do you like King Crimson?" And he said yes. I don't know how that happened, what the odds were of him saying yes, why I wanted to, or why I thought asking some random person that question would get me anywhere.
But it got you somewhere, didn't it?
It sure did.
You didn't use the age-old joke then when you said, "Have you heard of King Crimson?" and they said yes, and you said, "No, King Crimson, different band."
That's good. I like that.
Same drummer, different band.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, we got into like this huge discussion about prog from there. Like he's a huge fan of Genesis, and I am too. And like the reason I got into the Phil Collins era was because of him. Like he was telling me like, "Oh, you need to check out like the Phil Collins stuff, like the stuff after Peter Gabriel."
You always have to edge somebody into that era. Most people just stop at Peter.
Yeah.
But that's another discussion.
It's a different show as well, that. But yeah, just sticking with that just to go down that rabbit hole, shall we say? I think you're right. I think people seem to, in the progressive audience particularly, they will say, "Oh, we'll stick to the Peter Gabriel era," possibly going as far as when Steve Hackett left. And then they'll leave it there, not realizing that there were always hidden progressive gems on virtually every Genesis album, past then all the way up to Calling All Stations, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know what your knowledge of Genesis is like, but yeah, I think there's always
Genesis is my favorite band.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tied with King Crimson as my favorite too. So
yeah, and
combined, we could write a Genesis encyclopedia together.
Yeah, we could do a Genesis podcast, but that's a lot. But yeah. I've seen Phil Collins live. I've like read books, listened to all the albums. Me too. Like they're great. I love them, and I get like people downplaying the commercial stuff, but yeah, as you said, on the albums, there was always hidden little gems, and there was. But I think more or less the songwriting was consistent the whole way. You know, like they just focused on just writing good songs, regardless of if they were poppy or not. And most of the time, the songs were very high quality.
Absolutely. And in some ways...
There are some bad ones, though.
Yeah, in some ways, I can always tell a Tony Banks melody, that he's written, the vocal...
Oh, yeah.
The music for that melody, I can almost hear it immediately and go, that's definitely one of Tony's songs. And you can almost...
Especially his lyrics.
Yeah, his lyrics are very, very different from Phil and Mike.
Oh, yeah. And Mike's somewhere in the middle.
Not putting Phil down, but I think that Tony writes better lyrics for ballads as well.
Yeah, because
I agree.
Didn't Tony write the lyrics for Evidence of Autumn?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's one of my favorite Genesis songs. It is just beautiful. So that should have been on Duke, damn it.
Yes, it should. It really should. Yeah. So. There are a lot of songs that should have been around that period that they recorded that weren't on albums, around the Duke period, and then Abacab, they recorded songs for both that didn't turn up on the albums, and you think, wow, but we've gone off down a rabbit hole here, but we should be talking about King Crimson.
Yeah. So I can talk about prog bands all day.
Me too.
Same here. So what's the history of... you've just explained the show history. How would you describe the show then to anybody who's new to it?
I would describe the show as two 20-somethings just blabbing on about a band that had its peak in the 70s, but yet maintain... It's just two people just babbing on about a band that they really like. You know, like we do have like the term analysis in there, but it's not very academic in terms of like, these bars do this and then there's like a change here and all this other junk. It's more or less just like we'll break down the lyrics a lot of the time because they're fascinating, but it's mostly just us talking about these songs. And what I like is there's quite a few Crimson songs the further we go down that don't get talked about in depth as much as others. And so being able to highlight some of these tracks, I think, is really good for them, especially Lizard, when we did the whole Lizard series. I just really liked finally getting a bit more in depth with that record because the opinion on that one is all over the place. And I'm kind of a Lizard defender. So.
We had fun with that one. I feel very strongly against Lizard. So, but yeah, like it's a very lighthearted podcast. Like I'm not a musician myself, so I can't really talk much about like theory and like the different like chords and that kind of thing, like time signatures, whatever. But I love just talking about this band and just the impact they've had on my life and just how incredible their music is. Like it's really exciting to have like this podcast and know like here I am with one of my best friends talking about my favorite band and people are actually enjoying listening to our conversations. Like I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, we've occasionally gotten like emails from people saying how much they like the show. And I don't always highlight them on the podcast. Sometimes I say if they're interesting, I'll view them. But usually when people send that stuff, I do read it. And usually I'll send it to Avery. And usually it's just like, oh, that's just very nice of somebody to reach out. So we greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, we do. Thank you.
That's okay. So I've listened to quite a few episodes so far personally. So the idea is that you're going through the songs of King Crimson song by song, starting from the very first 21st century schizoid man to what Robert and the men will end up coming up with sometime soon, hopefully.
I believe the last track is, I think it's Power to Believe for a Coda.
Yep.
But we'll probably put that in with just Power to Believe 3 because it bookends Power to Believe 3.
Yep.
Because I guess I'll get on history on you, and that is Power to Believe 3 was originally called The Deception of the Thrush, and it was longer live, and there was a whole war guitar solo from Trey Gunn in it. But when they did the album, Trey and Fripp had a falling out, and so they replaced the war guitar solo at the end with Fripp doing some soundscaping and calling it a coda. So I'm thinking we'll probably just loop those together since they're supposed to be one piece anyway. So.
Yeah, and that's a long way down the line.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to talk about Power to Believe. That's a great album. So, it's actually one of my favorites. So.
I love that album. Yeah, very much.
I haven't really listened to the whole way through in a long time, but Eyes Wide Open is on that one, right?
Yes.
That song is one of my favorites.
Yes. We're going to praise Baloo a lot when we get to his stint in the band.
I met him twice.
Yeah.
So since you've listened to the show, have you heard us be critical of Jacko yet?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Well, we figured it. Do you agree or not? I guess we'll ask you a question.
I think in a way it's a problem for a lot of people going into any band when you're going into bands where they've had such prominent singers. I mean, so King Crimson, you'll think of, Greg Lake, you'll think of, John Wetton, and you'll think of Adrian Belew, and the problem is that you're comparing them to them, and there's no way that they're going to get to that sort of level that those three were at, even though they were three completely different types of singer. They were incredible singers in their own right. And it's just that I don't think that Jacko's able to get to that sort of level, shall we say.
I see where you're coming from. I still think if they did more original material live, or if they just did a whole album of original material, I think it would legitimize him more.
I agree, because like Martin said, like it's hard to like match up to, you know, like Greg Lake, John Wetton, Adrian Belew. Like maybe if Jacko was just like a soloist, you just hear his stuff and just be like, oh, whatever. But sometimes with the stuff he does with King Crimson, you're just like, Jacko, why?
Yeah.
His interpretation of Indiscipline comes to mind.
We're not going there yet. That's a whole, trust me, that's a whole thing, because we met on through like King Crimson like ship posting pages on Facebook and stuff. Okay. And so it's a lot of younger people like us talking about Crim. And so when that Indiscipline, when that live version first came out, so there were some heated arguments. I know there was. So
I think that was probably before I got into King Crimson, because I didn't start listening to them until 2017.
It was around then.
Was
or maybe
it?
A little bit after. Well, I remember, I think it was like, it was on a Crimson like Discord page.
Yeah, I do remember people talking about it. And like when I mentioned that I was going to see them live, like when I got the tickets, my friends on the Discord I was in were like, oh, is he going to sing Indiscipline? Like, is he? And he did. Oh. I was disappointed. But that was the only complaint I have about that show.
Yeah.
I mean, seeing Bop and Bobby in real life
it's got to be lovely.
Life-changing.
Though, real quick before we end the Jacko stuff, I will say Saturday, or at the recording of this, the next song up is, we did Prelude, Song of the Gulls, and Islands together. And I do give Jacko high praise for his vocals on Islands. So I'll give him some credit on that.
Yeah, not bad.
The problem he's got with they've got with any of those trio of albums, the Discipline, Beat, and Three of a Perfect Pair, is that they are such great albums, and they are distinctly Adrian Belew style albums. So it's really tricky to try and replicate his vocal, because nobody else sings like or performs like him.
Yeah,
except maybe David Byrne.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some similarities there. Yeah.
Sorry, it's just like, I know sometimes when people would criticize Belew, they would say it's like, oh, they couldn't get David Byrne, so they got Adrian Belew. But I don't find that comparison very one-to-one. But
yeah.
It's just, I've heard that over the years. So.
Yeah, but like another thing with Jacko not being able to sound like Adrian, like he's a British guy and an American guy, so the accents they're
different human beings, just different personalities.
Yeah, Adrian just has like his own very distinct vocal style, and I wouldn't say Jacko's voice is very distinctive, at least not to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, just as an aside, I've got here on my list of bullet points here. So, have you ever thought of contacting any members of the group about your podcast at all?
Funny you say that. So, thing is, I don't know how to get in contact with any of the other members, though. I remember a while ago, I think it was on Reddit or something, that somebody was like, hey, like Robert Fripp has one of those like cameo celeb VM things, or if you pay them money, they'll like send you a video or something. So I pretty much placed an order, as it were, being like, hey, Fripp, would you mind doing, say, like an intro for the show? Still haven't heard back from him, though. So it's just that? Like, it was a couple days ago. But it was just like a spitball, like, if he doesn't do it, that's fine. I'm not out any money, but but I actually have no idea how to get in contact with the others. Though Avery, I believe, didn't Mastelato retweet some of your memes before?
What happened was someone posted one of my memes from Tumblr on Instagram, and then Pat Mastelotto saw that Instagram post and posted it on his feed.
Yeah.
That was in 2017. I was like, oh my God, like this is one of the greatest accomplishments of my life. And I showed that same meme.
Met Baloo.
Yes, twice. Wow. And I talked to him on Facebook too, but that's another story. But yeah, he's amazing. Like, and he's just one of like the nicest people I've ever met. But honestly, I think if I were to message him and like tell him about the podcast, he might be willing to check it out.
Absolutely, yeah. I think both him and Pat would be, because they both seem quite, like nice guys that they've always liked posts that I've put up on my Instagram about Crimson and any projects that they've both been involved in. And I always wish Adrian a happy birthday every year when it's his birthday. So
yeah,
that's cool. Maybe we should consider that. Maybe we should get Baloo on the show and have him talk about one of his tracks. I doubt he'd do that, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Have him recount the story of our meeting. I want to hear it from his perspective.
Honestly, if there's one song I'd like to get him on the show for, it would probably be Neurotica.
Yeah. That'd be really cool.
So, who knows, maybe.
Who knows? So, have either of you had history with recording before, or is this show the first time you've actually done anything like this?
For me, it is.
Like recording audio?
Yeah, like doing another podcast or radio or any sort of audio recording.
Okay, well, so real quick, I guess I'll talk about myself a little bit more. So this is my first podcast, but I have recorded music before, solo and with a band. I was in a band for a good few years, kind of off and on with a good friend of mine. But then like some personal things came up and I had to leave that roughly a year ago. But I do make some solo music here and there, but it's more like ambient electronic stuff. But I haven't really put anything out of note in a good long time. So yeah, I've had history with recording audio before, myself and with other people. I don't know if you've ever recorded music or tried to record like songs for bands and all that, but it's a very different experience. I'd say a bit more hellish.
It is. It is. Yeah. My front and end music are both me. I've done all those. So.
Yeah, cool.
So the music that you have in your show and any clips that you might use, how do you go about using those?
Oh, the King Crimson audio?
Yes. Yeah.
So pretty much I own just about all the Crimson records already. So I already have like the database to go to for that stuff. And we just record we record a Zoom call for the episodes, and then we'll edit it through Audacity, which is a free audio program. It's a bit primitive, but I've figured out how to use it over the years, and Avery edits as well, and he does a pretty good job. So we usually just do that stuff. And yeah, in the audio for Crimson, I'll just put it in. I'll clip like good parts of it and like fade it in or fade it out, or just whatever kind of springs to me at that time, usually. So, in fact, there's been a couple times where I haven't used the studio version. I've used something different. I think for the Moonchild episode, I used a little bit of, I think it was Tony Levin's cadenza that they did live instead, just because I thought it was very interesting to have differently. So.
Yeah, I think you've said before that sometimes the live versions of their songs are so fascinating and so different that it's just interesting to listen to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have an extensive King Crimson bootleg collection. Fripp, please don't steal my soul. Oh wait, he already did. Anyway.
He's going to turn down the offer now that he knows that. I have two of the big box sets. I have the Lark's Tongues one and the Islands Arrow one. And
yeah, for me, I I just collected them through like SoulSeek, just like downloading them. Like I would look up individual dates, and then I would just listen to these bootlegs. Like I would be up for like hours at night just listening to all these different versions of Lark's Tongues and 21st Century Schizoid Man. And yeah, there are some really, really great ones. Like just the whole like Lark's tour, like the 73, 74 tours were just so fascinating to listen to. Like the improv being different like every time. And I've mentioned this, how much I love this, like with every improv, how it just leads perfectly into Exiles.
Yeah.
And then Robert Fripp doing a slightly different guitar solo every time on Easy Money. And then just all the different things they do in Lark's Tongues, and just, yeah.
They keep re-releasing it, so they know it's good.
Yeah.
I've tried to hunt down the original Great Deceiver box set just because I'd like to have it, like for preservation purposes, but haven't been able to come across a good one just yet.
When did they release that?
That was 92.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so like there wasn't a lot of Crimson Live stuff before that. There was Earthbound and USA. That was it.
Yeah.
Couldn't imagine.
I was going to say they seem to be releasing quite a lot of archive material lately with all the big boxes and everything that are coming out. So perhaps you'll get something soon enough.
Yeah, potentially. I think Fripp finally realized the value of that back catalog, especially with like stuff like Great Deceiver and then the early collectors clubs selling very well. And so I think he finally realized that there was a like kind of a hunger for more Crimson material because they were notoriously hard to get for a long time. Even in the years when they were re-releasing product on CD and vinyl all the time, but you couldn't stream their stuff, which wasn't until very recently. Even then it was hard. But now it feels like it's easier than ever to listen to King Crimson. So it's easier for me to recommend it to people now.
Yeah, same here. Like in the past, I'd talk about them a little bit, then I'd stop myself and be like, oh yeah, like they aren't on Spotify or anything. So I knew like the people I was talking to, like they wouldn't really know what I was talking about, and they wouldn't have like anything to go by. Because like I remember when I found in the court, like I just found like a zip file on someone's blog of the album, and like I found that through Google, and I just downloaded it. But like if any like random person, like your friend just tells you about some band and like you want to check them out, like you're not going to go like that deep just to find something. Like
Yeah.
I was just really ready to find some new music at that point. I'd heard a lot about King Crimson, and yeah, so I came across that zip file. I downloaded it on my phone, and like that album just immediately, like its impact on me is just like nothing else. Like
That's in the court, right?
Yeah, in the court.
Okay.
In the court.
Yeah. In the court was my first too.
Yeah.
I think it's like, everybody's first. Like I've never heard anybody say they got in the Crimson through Red. It's always in the court.
It is.
Yeah, I just remember hearing 21st Century Schizoid Man. It just blew my mind. Like
you too?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that song as soon as it starts is like something completely different to everything else of its time. It's just wow.
Oh yeah. And even still by today's standards, like it definitely sounds old.
Yeah.
But there is something, it's just so well performed and like so weirdly recorded that it has this kind of weird charm to it. Especially if it's like when you think that came out in the late 60s and you wouldn't associate that kind of music with the 60s. Maybe like, you know, that's closer to like the fusion period of like the mid 70s, really, if it's closer to anything. So
yeah, I remember when I first heard it, like I was just like, this was released in 1969. Like, no way. Because I just never heard anything like it. And I didn't even know music like that existed before I heard it.
No.
And when I did, I was like, this is the music I've been searching for like my entire life. So really, like, nothing has impacted me the way King Crimson has. Like, from that, like, that led me into the progressive rock rabbit hole. And now I'm the admin of the King Crimson meme group on Facebook. And I've met Adrian Ballou twice. We have this podcast.
Didn't you meet Steven Wilson too?
Yes, I did. I met him in 2018. And I showed him the meme that Pat Mastelotto reposted.
That's cool. I think what's made things, you touched on it slightly there. I think what's made things a lot better is the fact that they have now accepted the streaming age, and I think that makes things better for people, like you said, for saying to people, "Oh, I think you ought to check this out by King Crimson," and now that they can do it streaming wise, because a lot of people nowadays, they don't just go out on a whim and buy albums like some of us would and think, "Oh, I'll just try out this entire album from this band." They'll go and listen to it nowadays as a song on a streaming platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Spotify has like a really good like prog rock playlist, and it originally was like just some live stuff, but then they switched them to the studio tracks. And they've gotten like really good traction on, say, like Spotify since they started. So
yeah, I think part of it is the popularity of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yeah, like, that's part of it too.
Yeah, that was recommended to me by an ex, and then JoJo was referenced in it. I'm sorry, King Crimson was referenced in JoJo.
Yeah.
So,
do you know of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
No, I don't know them actually. No.
Yeah, it's
an anime,
this really, really, really weird anime and manga, and it just has all these like references to like classic rock and like in just music in general. But it's weird. I can't say I would recommend it. The music references are good.
Yeah, if I recall, it's like King Crimson in that anime. It's like this like evil essence or something like that.
Yeah. Something like that. It's called a stand, but there's really no way to explain what that means.
Yeah. And plus there is this great Adult Swim show called Venture Bros, where the dad is really into prog, and there's like one episode where one of the sons finds a bunch of albums in the crate, and he's like going through them, and he's like, "Hey, what's this one with the face?" And his dad's like, "Oh no, you're not ready to journey into the core of the Crimson King. Listening to that too early might turn you into an evil scientist." So
I've seen that screen cap.
Yeah, I love that. It's so good.
Just in passing, I like the cover version of "In the Court of the Crimson King" by the Claypool Lennon Delirium, if you know that.
Yeah, that's how I got into them.
Okay.
Well, and when I was in a band, the bass player was a big fan of theirs. Shocker. And yeah, I've listened to their stuff. They're all right. But their cover of "In the Court" I really like. And also I've heard Les Claypool, I think it was like his Flying Brigade, do Thela Hun Jinjit, which was pretty cool. It was such like a random Crimson song to do, but
yeah, they're both serious progressive rock fans, aren't they? Both Sean and Les. Oh.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear like the child of a Beatle playing arguably the first post-Beatles, playing a song from probably the first post-Beatles album in terms of like musical style. But
yeah, and it's worth mentioning there, Sgt. Pepper is actually what inspired Fripp to pursue a professional career in music.
Oh yeah, Day in the Life terrified him.
Wow.
Yeah, his dad owns like a law firm, and he was going to work for him or something like that. But he'd been playing guitar since he was 11, and then he heard Sgt. Pepper, must have been 21, and he just decided, like, after he heard that, like, he needed to create music.
I think he was tone deaf. Wasn't he born tone deaf?
Yep, and then he just taught himself through like sheer force of will.
Like, that's
even developed his
determination.
own tuning.
Yeah.
I've tried playing in that tuning. It is bizarre.
I bet.
It's cool though. I like it, but it's not a permanent tuning or anything like that.
You know, I'm really impressed with Fripp, like teaching himself all these like classic rock songs and new standard tuning for the lockdown lunch.
That stuff is amazing.
Yeah, wasn't his most recent one like Foo Fighters?
Yeah, I think it was like Everlong or something. It's just so weird hearing him play these songs. That's like you never thought he would ever touch them.
Yeah.
No. He seems to be doing them with his wife lately as well, Toya.
Yeah. They're so cute.
Yes,
they really are. They're adorable.
Yeah. I think it helps that they're complete opposite people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they work together so beautifully, though, don't they?
Yes, 100%.
Absolutely. Have you got a favourite album, the both of you, by King Crimson?
Well, my favorite is probably Islands.
Okay.
But I also put Discipline up there. Usually, if somebody's like, if they want to get into Crimson, I always usually give them Discipline. Just because there's something, I think, very, well, it's 80s flavored, and people love the 80s these days. And it's just such a strong, consistent record start to finish. There's no fat on there. It's just golden. And as much as I love Islands, I wouldn't give it to somebody who's brand new to Crim. So.
Yeah. My favorite keeps changing, but right now I just really, really like Lark's Tongues. And like, I just think that era was just fantastic. But there's a lot of different albums that I just have like a lot of connection to, like some kind of like sentimental like connection with. But yeah, Lark's Tongues is just like musically, it's just so fascinating. Like there's just so much going on, and it's just this really great combination of all these different genres and ideas. Like it's like classical, like some jazz-ish ideas, and like early metal, and just like blues. Like there's just so much on there. It's just fantastic. But I also agree with Ryan about Discipline. It's another really great album. And I agree, like it's consistent like all the way through.
Definitely. What do you think of the outside projects then, like the Crimson Project and those sort of things as well?
Oh yeah, isn't that Blue, Levin, and Mastelado?
The projects?
The projects, yeah.
Yeah, there's like so many.
Like the late 90s stuff?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, see, I've dipped my toes in the projects, and I really like them. Though I wouldn't have been able to appreciate them if I say when I became a Crimson fan roughly 2009, if I had listened to him immediately then, I wouldn't have understood it at all. But I think because I listen to a lot of other music outside of Crimson and even prog in general, I try to encompass a lot of different stuff, like deep, like weird experimental stuff, and then even like modern surface level pop music. I try to encompass everything. But yeah, the projects, I really appreciate them because it's clear that between Thrack and Power to Believe, Fripp didn't really know what he wanted to do with Crimson other than he wanted to keep doing it. Yeah. And so to me, it was him just saying like, let's detach ourselves from the name, but still try to make music that could be considered that. And it's varying degrees of quality, I think, but it is, I always appreciate when artists do experimental stuff or try something new. I always appreciate that because it takes a lot to go out of your comfort zone musically and attempt something out there. Even if it ends up failing, I'll always respect it for what it is. And I really respect the projects, particularly the first one when when Bruford was in that one. Yeah. That like jazz cafe show is really good. Like, wow.
Was Bruford Levin Upper Extremities, was that a project or is that separate?
No, that was separate, but that's also really good.
Yeah, because I've listened to that, but like off the top of my head, like the only project I can remember listening to was A Scarcity of Miracles, and that was a long time ago.
I don't like that one.
Yeah, wasn't it like kind of ambient? I don't even remember.
Yeah, it is.
Ambient, like soundscapey.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
I love ambient music. I'm an Eno fanboy, but there was just something about that record that just kind of, I don't know, it just felt kind of boring. You know?
Yeah, it didn't leave any impact on me.
Like, it's easy for ambient music to become boring, but I like a lot of ambient music because it can get very experimental or just really, you know, try to work with the moods and atmosphere. But that one really didn't. It just to me it sounded like it just sounded like they were trying to do a bad David Sylvian album. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I do like me some David Sylvian.
It's Sylvian.
Yep. I was going to say, what do you think of the work that he did with David Sylvian?
Oh, it's awesome. I have the album they did in '91. It's in my collection somewhere. Next Day, I think.
love those albums.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've got that.
Yeah, and then Darshan was the other one.
I haven't heard the other one. I just heard the first one. And listening to it, you could see why Fripp wanted it to be Crimson. You can hear it.
Yeah. I love David Sylvian's voice. Like, I just think he's a fantastic singer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wish Japan had been around a little longer because I really like a lot of their stuff, but like David Sylvian's solo stuff doesn't really do it for me because I'm not huge on like ambient music, but
yeah, his album,
voice is great.
Yeah, I love his album. I think it's from '86, Gone to Earth. That's probably my favorite of his. So just a mixture of like really good '80s pop tunes and then just like some deep ambient stuff, and then he kind of blends them together as well. So.
Yeah, it's interesting to imagine what 90s and early 2000s King Crimson would have been like if Fripp had replaced Adrian with David Sylvian.
Yeah.
Because like I know he offered David Sylvian the job, but he turned it down.
Yeah. So I think at that point Sylvian's like, I don't need to do this.
Yeah.
I think he said it was too daunting. It was like too much for him to do. Which I can respect because
he seems like a pretty like low profile musician. Like he doesn't want a lot of fame, and
I don't think
I imagine the pressure of being the new King Crimson vocalist.
Yeah, and I don't think he wanted Fripp telling him what to do. So.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. I liked Japan a lot. I mean, going off on another tangent here, we listened to the new Richard Barbieri album this afternoon. So, you know,
how is that?
Was good. It's a really good album. I mean, there's something very. I don't think anybody does keyboards or soundscapes like Barbieri does. You know, even going back to the Japan days, and he's kept that sort of. It's a strange ambient feel to his playing that's very much him, isn't it? It's textured and you can call it musical, but it's more backgroundy sort of. Yeah, I suppose it's the perfect explanation of the word ambient, I suppose.
Yeah, very moody.
Yeah. Like I'm a big fan of Porcupine Tree too, and I know he did keyboards there too, and people have pointed out like he never did solos, but like his soundscapes and just like his ideas and like just the different sounds that he used really added to the atmosphere of the music.
Yeah, he's like the next generation Richard Wright.
Yeah, he gives the songs a beautiful bed to sort of lay on and to build from.
Yeah,
I'll have to check that out. That sounds good. I'm always in the market for some cool ambient music.
Yeah. It's called Under a Spell, I think it's called.
I like it.
I was thinking of possibly doing a punch-in where I ask you for like a hidden gem that you might think that people might not know of. What do you think? Do you think that's a helpful thing?
In the Crimson discography?
Yes. Yep.
Well, I did mention I love indoor games, so that would kind of be a hidden gem. I don't know, outside of that, let's think about it.
Do you think cat food would be kind of considered a hidden gem just because, like, In the Wake is just so overshadowed by In the Court? And I really like Cat Food, just the jazziness of it.
I feel like Cat Food is the song people know from In the Wake, though.
Yeah.
How about Dig Me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I love, or even Industry. Like, I love Industry. In fact, of all the songs that the new era doesn't do, it's shocking to me they haven't attempted Industry, because I think it'd be perfect for them.
Yeah, like it would be really interesting to hear that one with the three drummers. That'd be awesome.
It'd be perfect. And you can hear Levin do a slap bass, and then you could maybe get Melon on there. And I don't know. I feel like that would be a real cool song to bring into a more modern light.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Gavin could look into possibly because he does a lot of like sample work with his drums, so he could possibly put in some industrial sounds almost in there just to add to that as well.
Yeah, like I'm surprised he hasn't even asked Bruford for the old 80s Simmons samples to like use them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if Bruford still has them, I don't even know if he does.
Yeah, I know he probably he might. I know he did like that big like auction or whatever it was.
Yeah, I watched that video. I love that video. Because I just like hearing Bill just talk and hearing him talk about equipment, because I'm a drummer as well. So hearing Bill talk about it is fascinating. And even get to see that one, like, I forget what cymbal company it was, but they tried to recreate the red cymbal, the cymbal on red.
Yeah.
And he's just like, it's not bad, but it's not the same, because it's obviously not. But
yeah, because wasn't the original like smashed up?
Yep.
It was something like that.
Yeah, somebody just threw it into a trash can. It was all like bent up and all that. And he, for some reason, took it, put it on a stand and hit it and just loved the sound of it. But it like died after the album was done because it was so beaten up. It just couldn't sustain any more punishment.
Yeah.
And I think he even said he went to Peisty and was like, could you like recreate this? And in the 70s, people weren't really into trashy cymbals. At least I don't think they were. So Peisty was just like, what's wrong with you? Though I'm sure if a company wanted to do it now, I bet you they could. I think the technology has gotten to that point. So, and I've played some pretty trashy cymbals in my day that are very close to that red trash cymbal sound. You essentially just have to take a cymbal and just like rip chunks of it off and just have it be this horrible, messy thing that like could like cut you if you hold it wrong, but it's got a good sound.
Can they go to the original tracks of the recording and actually sample the cymbal from that?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's like if you want to have like that sound in a more acoustic setting and control it in your own unique way.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do that. But yeah, sampling it would be fantastic. I'm sure people have. So it took a long time for me to hear that that people really loved that trashy like sound in that regard. That like it's even surprised Bill as it went on that people loved it, particularly on One More Red Nightmare, where it's kind of a showcase for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, are there any standout moments in your show that you've had so far?
There's one I really like, just because it's rather silly and it made me laugh out loud a few times. And that was when we were recording Epitaph, and there was that little bit in the moment in the middle where Avery brought up at that time the current U.S. president, Trump. And it was, I was just like, we're not a political podcast. And then he just goes, yeah, F Trump. And I just died. That's still one of my favorite moments.
The orange gremlin.
Yes, that's what I call him.
That's what you called him.
Yeah,
I
it's
remember
funny.
that.
Yeah.
I don't even remember saying that.
You did say that.
It's so
Oh
funny.
my God.
It's still funny. I love
Yeah.
it.
And when you suddenly just burst out with that F trump, it was just like, whoa.
Yeah, I think when that came out, the election still hadn't happened, but we were gearing towards it. So
Yeah, must have been like the end of September, maybe early October.
yeah. And I'm also a big fan of the indoor games episode just because I get to talk about how much I love indoor games. So
and I got to talk about how much I don't.
yeah, whatever. You're wrong.
But then I remember closing the episode with "Hey Ho."
Oh yeah, and I think I synced up Gordon's laugh to that.
Brilliant.
Because I knew I had to do that.
I look forward to listening to that episode.
Oh yeah, the lizard ones are really good. In fact, I keep track of like the stats, and when the first one, Circus, like was released, that one probably had the biggest gain of listens of any episode. Like it just like shot really high up. So I think people were excited for us to talk about Lizard. So
cool. That's cool.
Oh yeah.
So what sort of research do you do ready for for doing the show?
Well, for me, I usually just listen to the song multiple times. If there's like alternate versions or live versions, I tend to hunt those down as well. And occasionally I'll pick out like cover versions if I think they're like notable. I did that more within the court, picking out cover versions, but as we get deeper into the catalog, it's harder to do. But I think for stuff probably like Lark's Tongues Part 2 or Red, I know there's some more covers of those. So I like to highlight those to see other people's different interpretations of the material. I usually just try to, for me, immerse myself in that song as much as possible to just really like reacquaint myself with it and sort of think about different things that I wouldn't have normally thought about from a casual perspective, more trying to listen to it in a more critical way.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do. Like I listen to the song, I take notes, and I'll read about like the album on Wikipedia or whatever. And if there's any like analysis of the lyrics on like Genius or song meanings or whatever, like I'll read that. And then I have my extensive bootleg collection. So if there's any live versions to listen to, I probably have it, unless it's from the Jacko era.
But we don't like write a script or anything. We just riff it. So like
yeah,
usually we'll have notes and things we like want to go over specifically, but we like to keep it organic. So it's just like a normal conversation kind of thing.
Yeah, so there's no actual structure at all before you go into the show. You just make it up as you go along, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
I mean, King Crimson made it up as they went along too. So why can't we?
Even when they play it live, they've almost got the jazz ethic in a way live.
Oh, yeah.
They'll go in and they've got the bare idea of like, we're doing this song, whatever you want to do around that, do it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I sort of live a lot of my life by the jazz aesthetic. Like at least with solving problems, like you just kind of wing it, you know. I'm not very like a structured person in that regard. Like I'll maybe have like little plans of things that I need to do, but how I do it or how I approach it is just kind of how I do it. So
yeah, I'm very surprised that there's not more cover versions of later King Crimson songs, because I mean, even going up to, you mentioned, the Power to Believe. You've got things like Happy with What You Have to Be Happy With. I mean, that's a brilliant.
Oh yeah.
That riff on there, it just. I found when I first listened to the album, I was there and I'm sort of like trying to count, and I'm thinking, what time are they doing this? And I'm counting it and I'm counting it. I'm like, no, they're not doing it in that. And there's all sorts of little riffs on that album and on other albums before then as well that are just, you think, why haven't people actually tried to have a go at those songs?
Well, I think you answered your question because they're rather tricky.
Yeah,
that's true.
And plus with new standard tuning, on top of just like the different time signatures, a little tricky.
Because I think Fripp started using NST exclusively, I want to say starting around Thrack, though it might have been a little bit later. But I think Power to Believe was all new standard tuning.
Right, okay.
So
I need to look that up. I might be able to play it easier.
Yeah, maybe. Because one Crimson song I'm surprised doesn't have more covers, as far as I know, is on Thrack, Sex, Sleep, Eat, Drink, Dream.
Yeah.
Because that's just such a funky little tune that I'm surprised more people haven't attempted it. Like, yeah, there's some weird bits in the middle, but just like you could just do that little riff and just kind of make it a more simple funk version. And I think it'd actually be kind of successful. But I don't know.
But there you've got the Bill and Pat both working perfectly together with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Bill's always been good at working with other drummers at the same time, because it worked when going slightly off topic again here, but when they did the Union tour for Yes, and you had Alan White and Bill Bruford both playing together, they weren't in each other's faces, so to speak.
Yeah, and going even further back, when Bill played with Genesis in '76.
Yeah.
It's good, but it's not as good as Phil and Chester.
No. Yeah. But it's still really, really interesting to listen to.
That Union tour is very fascinating, because that album is crap, but man, that tour is like probably the best Yes tour they ever did.
Yeah.
They overworked the songs on the album that the tour was based on.
Oh God, yeah. Like, ugh.
when they took it out of the hands of the actual Yes members or the actual musicians and added to it or played around with it and tinkered, it destroyed any possibility of what could have been much better.
Yeah, because I think there's like one or two songs on there that have potential to be really good.
Yeah,
but there's just way too much on there. It's not enjoyable. But yeah, what you said with Bill, like he's such an amazing musician overall. Like he's one of, if not my favorite drummer of all time. And every like song or album or anything I've ever heard Bill play on, he's always the highlight. He just knows how to play. Just like he's a bit of an overplayer. Like he'll sometimes do too much, but it somehow always manages to make sense in the end, you know?
Yeah, and he's incredibly humble at the same time about it, because he'll downplay his, when you hear him in interviews, he'll say, "Oh, I'm not all that," basically, and you'll think, "Wow, like, you're kidding, better than you think you are."
Yeah, exactly. I have his autobiography. I've read it.
Yeah, I used to have it too, and I remember reading it. And he is very, very humble.
Oh yeah, I think it's
like he describes himself as being so arrogant when he was in his 20s.
I mean, he probably was, but
yeah, I'm sure he was.
But like, yeah, it's like he'll spend like I think it's like the first chapter and a half, he just downplays himself as a player. Like to the point where it's like, is that just like a British thing? Are British people just like overly humble?
Yeah, I think we are. I think it is a British thing. I've heard that before.
Okay, because I heard like Rick Wakeman also say something similar to that. Like, British people will just like be like, "Oh man, I'll just sit in this corner because I'm not that good or whatever." And it's like, no, you're good. Like, it's okay to say if you are, but
Rick is a very funny man.
I love him.
Very honest man at the same time.
Oh yeah, I have a lot of respect for Wakeman. So even his new album wasn't bad.
Oh, he has a new album?
Yeah, I think it's called Red Planet. It's kind of Henry VIII, the Six Wives album. So if you like that, you'll probably get some appreciation for it. So.
So what other podcasts do you both listen to?
I don't really listen to a whole lot of podcasts myself, really. Like, if I listen to anything, it's music.
I listen to podcasts quite frequently. Just sometimes I'm not in the mood to listen to music, so sometimes I'll just listen to podcasts. I mentioned Chapo's Trap House. I listen to that rather frequently. I mean, also a similar podcast called Bad Faith. It's all about like American politics. So, But also I'm a huge video game fan, and every once in a while I'll listen to like a video game podcast, just if it's like going over news and speculation about stuff. So there's one I like. It's called Nintendo Shack, because I'm a Nintendo guy. So I listen to that here and there. That's really about it.
So, what advice would you give to people starting out in podcasting for the first time?
Make sure you have a good microphone.
Yeah, so many people complain about the audio quality in our early episodes.
Yeah, and I was just using this like cheap gaming headset that I found, but I think it was for the letters. I finally got like a good microphone from Amazon.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm qualified to give advice on podcasting, but I'd say like just I don't know, just be persistent, and if you have a passion for it, just do it. You know, no matter what it is, because podcasts span so many different because it's essentially just listening to people have conversations, and they can range in so many different topics that if you have a passion for it, just do it. You know, there's a good chance you'll find somebody out there who's into it, and if so, I think you're doing all right. So, I think our show's done way better than I thought it would. So.
Yeah, like I had no idea it would get this popular, that like it would reach an audience like anything beyond like just like the community that we're in, and maybe like people on Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
I think the good thing is that I've said this in other shows to other people before, is that a lot of podcasts they get the niche subjects that a lot of radio doesn't get. So because you're hitting a specific audience, I mean, there is, even though you say that they're little known, but they have a very strong fandom to King Crimson. There are people who are incredibly big fans of King Crimson. So I think you've hit that market there, and I think that's one of the good things about podcast.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Because there are other bands like Crimson, like say like The Residents, or other bands like that they're popular to an extent, but not huge. But that's the thing.
Yeah,
when you're
like
not
having that like cult following kind of.
Yeah, so it's like when you're not huge, the following, like if you're a fan, you're a fan. Like you're almost kind of dedicated to that. And it's just so interesting that other artists like The Residents or Tom Waits or even Kraftwerk to a certain extent, or Tangerine Dream, like these bands that are known to some degree, but they're not huge. But when you get into the fandom, you kind of get entranced almost by how people are so dedicated to it. You know, and it's just interesting to hear all these different opinions about it. And yeah, I didn't think like 10 years after becoming a Crimson fan, I'd be this much into it. But I think that just at the end of the day, that just shows how good the music is.
Yeah, like when I first listened to In the Court that one night, I had no idea it would send me on the journey that the past 4 years of my life has been.
Wow, 4 years, and you've got that collection that you've got now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I also have I have a few of their albums on vinyl. I back in 2019, like the early part of that year, I would go to record stores around Boston, and so I have a few. I know I have all the 80s albums, In the Court, In the Wake. I got Lark's Tongues for $6.
Nice.
Starless and Bible Black. And yeah, so that's 8 of the King Crimson albums on vinyl.
Weirdly enough, I haven't been able to find the 80s records, though I do have 3 of a Perfect Pair. And one cool thing in my collection is I have a 12-inch single of Sleepless, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Has the dance mix and some stuff on there. Yeah. Yeah, I used to collect like all the time. Like I have a huge collection of like CDs and vinyl, but I stopped in the last couple of years just because money and space and all that. But yeah, I have 2 copies of In the Court actually. So.
Wow.
Yeah, the one I have is a 1978 repress.
I have an original American, but it is but it's a little beat up. And then I found a repressing from like 83. So, but I also have 2 copies of that on CD. So
nice. Yeah, my copy of Larks is also really beat up. Like I said, I got it for $6. I was like, oh my god.
Is it the cover that's beat up, or the vinyl as well?
The vinyl's a little beat up too. Like it kind of skips at one part, and like it's all like crackly. But for what it is, like a King Crimson album for $6 and like an original American pressing, like can't complain too much.
No. So, how can people listen to your show, and where can they get in touch with you?
Well, our show hopefully is on everywhere you can get podcasts. So Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, Deezer, like literally everywhere. Though our like main hub, it's frame by frame .buzzsprout, SPROUT.com. That's like our main website, I guess. And it has the links to our episodes on every place. So if you want to go there and follow us from there, you can totally do that. If you want to contact us, our email is framebyframepod@gmail.com. I've considered setting up some more social media stuff, but for right now, I think the email and that website is good for now. So.
Yeah, because I mean, like, other than that, like, we're both very much on Facebook, like, and like I have Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, like those 3 that I use a lot.
Yeah, and we're busy people, you know.
Yeah.
So have you got a page on Facebook for the show, or?
We don't.
Yeah, what we do is like every week when Ryan uploads the episodes, I post the link on the King Crimson meme group. But I'm thinking, like, once we start Lark's Tongues, I want to also post it on like the bigger King Crimson group.
Yep.
Is, to be honest, like in the past, like I've been like a little bit nervous recording sometimes, and like when I've edited the episodes, it's just like, oh, I'm like, I sound like an idiot, or like I'm laughing too much or whatever. But lately, like, I think I did really well on Sailor's Tale. And after getting my own microphone for the letters, like, I'm just feeling a lot more confident. And now that we're starting a more popular album, I think we can reach a wider audience.
Yeah, Lark's Tongues will be, I think we'll get some more hits on that one, but.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know I'm excited to talk about that.
As am I.
Yep. I think you'll start to gain a bigger audience once you get into like the Lark's Tongue, the Starless, and Bible Black, and basically that trio of albums there, and Red.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We get to talk about the Marble Man himself.
Absolutely. Yeah, you do. Anyway, thank you very much for talking to me.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure and a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And thank you everybody for listening, and hope you listen again to another episode of Pods Like Us. So, how is everything where you both are? Because I'm guessing you're both in the States?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I live in Massachusetts. I'm a cashier at a supermarket, and I had quite a misadventure trying to get home today.
Wow.
Yeah, I was stuck like 45 minutes waiting for a ride.
Wow, that's
yeah.
That's crazy.
Was that, yeah. Just Lyft and Uber both being terrible.
Way it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. So, how I should probably ask this during the show, but how often do you record it? Do you record it every week for each episode, or is it in as and when?
Yeah, it's roughly once a week. Sometimes we'll get delayed a week for reasons, like work or personal stuff. But yeah, we tend to record once a week.
Okay. So how's COVID then? Is that is the lockdown?
What lockdown? This is America, dude. Like there's already a couple states trying to lift restrictions. I'm not in one of those. I'm in Ohio, but
yeah, I'm in Massachusetts, luckily, but I still get idiots coming through my line without a mask sometimes, which is appalling.
I think the lockdown, has it been working better in the UK? Because I know you guys have locked down severely, 3 times now?
Yeah, it was more severe the first time than the other 2 times though. Because the first time there was a police presence about everywhere, stopping people from being able to leave the area if they're not supposed to leave the area. But then the second and third times they've not had that presence there, so it's been a bit relaxed, I think. But not as relaxed as some places. Should we say Brazil?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
So.
Dear me. But it's not certainly not helped the entertainment business in some ways. No.
Yeah.
I was actually supposed to see Crimson last summer.
Yeah, I was too.
Yeah, but then COVID shut everything down. So
yeah.
I had 4th row seats. I was gonna be real up close with a guitar friend of mine. It was gonna be great, but oh well.
Yeah. Yeah, I was supposed to go with my boyfriend, but alas.
Yeah, they were supposed to play Nottingham as well, near to me, so I would have gone to have seen them there, but alas, that didn't happen either. And unfortunately, I've not seen King Crimson at all live, and I would love to.
Yeah, neither have I.
So. Yeah, I saw them live in 2017. I think I've mentioned it a few times throughout the podcast.
Yeah, you have. Yeah.
Yeah. They played at the Orpheum, which is a pretty old venue in Boston.
Yeah.
And it was just incredible. It was November 6th, 2017. I'll just never forget that day.
Do all that in the show. I might as well start it then if we're going into that.
Yeah.
Okay. How was that? Was that okay?
Yeah. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
So, are you both busy at the moment? You got recording coming up yourselves?
We're going to be recording the next episode, I think Monday. That's what we usually do.
Yeah, usually about Sunday, Monday is when we record. So
you just do the one a week. You don't try to block record them or anything ahead.
We have, but
yeah, when we first started, we would do 2 at once, but then we were just yeah, this is too much because I know for me, I kind of have to take time out of the day to sit down and listen and take notes, make sure I'm ready. It's hard to do that with 2 songs.
Yeah.
And usually with the second, when we would have the second episode, it would always sound more tired than the first one.
Yeah.
So, and plus it got to the point where we were we would record the 2 and then I would edit them both at the same time and then put them up and we'd be weeks ahead of recording and everything. And it just got to, it just was let's just lighten our load a little bit. We'll be okay.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
And I mean, it's nice to have a long-term project like this. I don't want to rush it, as I really look forward to recording every week. And it's just nice to have something I'm doing other than going to work and just coming home.
Mm-hmm. And it's fun to go through the discography again and sort of rethink about these songs in ways that I never really did before. So
yeah, because I listened to King Crimson so much for so long, 2017, 2018, and then even for a lot of 2019, like I kind of like took a little bit of a break for a while, but now I'm like really getting back into them. And with Larks coming up, then like I'll have my whole bootleg collection to listen to again. So
yeah, Larks is going to be fun because it'll allow me to re-go through the Larks box set as well, which is good, but it's weirdly small by Crimson standards now because they've just gotten even huger than that one. So
absolutely,
yeah.
I suppose an interesting thing is that when you're going back to them, if you've not listened to them for a while, you can almost have a new appreciation for songs as well that you didn't particularly weren't enamored to before or weren't particularly your favourites. You could listen to them again now and think, actually, listening to it and studying it, I really like this about it that I didn't notice before.
Exactly. In fact, there's one Crimson song in that Wettin period that everybody apparently loves, but I've never been a huge fan of it. So it'll be interesting to see if my opinion changes. And that's The Night Watch. I've never been
You don't like that one?
I've never been a big fan of it.
I love that song.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something about it just didn't click with me. But I'm of course willing to give it another chance, and hopefully my opinion will change. But throughout the years, I would listen to it and just be like, like I don't know. It's just on that album, I usually just listen to Deceiver, Lament, and then just skip to Fracture.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean Fracture is that's a beast.
Yes, it is.
Have you ever there's this one guy on YouTube, I think he's like making weird music or whatever, I think that's the name of the channel, and he has like I think he wrote a book about like he spent decades of his life learning to play Fracture, and it took him like 30 years to do it or something like that, and then
shit,
and then he made a video of himself doing it, and even then he had a couple mistakes in there, but it was pretty on point anyway. Just goes to show how incredibly complicated that song is to play.
Yeah, and just how dedicated some King Crimson fans are.
Yeah, I think even Fripp said when they brought it back for this modern era and he had to relearn it, that it was the hardest song he had to relearn. But
wow.
Yeah, he really likes to challenge himself.
He should challenge himself by coming on our podcast.
Yes, I agree.
Absolutely. Yep.
It would be amazing, but I highly doubt it.
I think my soul would just leave my body like permanently. They played 21st Century Schizoid Man, Epitaph, Moonchild, and The Court when I saw them.
So maybe it was I Talk to the Wind?
They didn't play that.
Yeah. It's so weird they don't play that one. But
I know. That's one of those softer songs that I think like Jacko could do okay with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He wouldn't hurt himself.
Yeah.
Some of Bill Bruford's work's got some really good jazz elements in it in some of his solo projects.
Yeah, Bruford and Earthworks.
Yeah.
I've even tracked down the stuff he did with National Health as well. And that stuff's pretty good. There's a bootleg of Bruford playing with Gong. Because he was in I think Gong was the first thing he did after Crimson broke up.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And yeah, and it's so weird hearing him in Gong, cause
what was he doing in Gong?
He needed work.
The biggest
he needed work, Abe. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of guys smoking weed and dropping acid or whatever.
He wrote about in his book. I think he mentioned that they were even hey, you can bring your family along, and Bill's nah, nah. But yeah, there's a bootleg of him playing with Gong. He's only in it for 2 months. It's so weird because Gong's weird already, but hearing his playing in there is fascinating. It's not bad, but there was never an album to legitimize it. So
yeah, I almost think it's a shame really with some of these. It's a bit like you said with the modern version of Crimson. You'd think, wow, they really need to actually get some material with that lineup in the studio recorded, really, because
yes, 100%. Because I'd like to
absolutely.
hear their original ideas. Because I'm sure, I guarantee you, Jacko has probably presented songs to Fripp, or even like Fripp or Mel, or just somebody I'm sure has like had ideas of original music with them. But Fripp seems very adamant to do it. I think
Yeah.
he's the one who's like, he doesn't really want to do new material, because I think it would,
Yeah, and
I think it would stop being fun for him. So I think he views this as fun.
Yeah, and he just doesn't want to record in a studio, and like he says, like it just wouldn't really be like feasible with the three drummers and like all that equipment.
Oh, I'm sure he could make it work. I think it's just, I think he's just at his point in his life. I think he's just seen all of the stress he had to go throughout King Crimson, and how just like he was unhappy pretty much the entire time. And I think if he tried to push it as like more modern, like original material, he would probably have to force himself to be unhappy to make it work. And I just don't think he wants to do that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I've heard that they do a lot of like improvised stuff for sound check. So you would have thought that if they had mobile recording equipment, they could actually record the sound checks and make albums from that.
Yeah, I think they've occasionally released improvs on the live records here and there, but they're always very short, and they're never anything that substantial. There was one, I forget the name of it. It was on the Radical Action box set, where it sounded like very disciplined-y, and I kind of liked it because it incorporates the three drummers a lot more than just trying to force them into the old stuff. But yeah, if they put out a new album, if they ever do, I'll buy it and listen to it, and we'll talk about it. But for now, we just have to assume it's never going to happen.
Absolutely. Shame.
It is a shame. But I mean, Fripp's body of work is already pretty substantial, especially his work with like Eno and Bowie and his solo stuff and all that. Like, he's put enough product out there that I think it still stands the test of time. So
yeah, like you can easily do 6 degrees of Robert Fripp with like any musician.
You can. I mean, he's even worked with David Byrne, so there you go.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He's on Izimbra, one of my favorite Talking Heads tracks.
Yep.
Like I'd more do 6 degrees with like someone like Brian Eno, just because he's spanned so many different like eras and music types, and has become very successful without being a big name.
Yeah.
Well, even there, I mean, you could use Eno as one of the degrees between Fripp and almost anybody else in the music business.
Oh yeah, and and Eno and Fripp, that's some of my favorite ambient music. Like, they gel perfectly together.
They do.
So.
There's a reason why what they both did together with David Bowie. There's a reason why that works, and they make that music special.
Oh yeah, and then interestingly enough, they replaced Fripp on Lodger with Adrian Belew. And I don't even think they knew each other yet.
No, they didn't. Yeah, the story that I read is that Robert and Adrian met at a club in New York. Yeah, and then Fripp wrote his phone number on Adrian's arm.
What was that? When was Adrian still in Talking Heads at that point?
I think so.
Okay, because I know he went from Zappa to Bowie, and then I think to Talking Heads, and then the Crimson.
And Crimson, yeah. Okay. Yeah, he wrote a post on a blog he used to have like way back, like the story of how he joined King Crimson. I guess like he was on tour with Talking Heads, and like they had like a huge party the night before, and then Fripp called him at like 9 a.m. the next morning, just asking him like right off the bat if he like just telling him about the new King Crimson, asking him if he wanted to join. I don't think he was making King Crimson yet. I think he was just like, no, he was. Well, because they were disciplined for a while. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I think you're right though. I think Fripp wanted to revive Crimson, but I think he was afraid to call it right away. Yeah.
I think he wanted
and then
it. I think he was just afraid of like if people heard Crimson were coming back, there'd be this expectation when they haven't even played a note yet. So I think it was just more that, oh, he's just forming a band.
Yeah.
Well, he was still working with Talking Heads, though, even when he was with Crimson in the 80s. So you've got him on the Talking Heads albums into 82 and 84, and I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought he was only on Remain in Light.
I think he did some stuff on the later albums as well, but more like lesser session stuff. Like he wasn't like an additional member like on the tours. Though I do remember, like I'm a big Paul Simon fan, and I learned that Adrian Belew is on the Graceland album. But you wouldn't know that because he doesn't do anything that substantial. He just, I think, plays some synth guitar on a couple tracks, but he doesn't do the Belew thing. He's just a session player.
Yeah.
But I found that very interesting. That Belew has this whole like session musician career that like he doesn't really make that big of a deal because he's just that good. So
absolutely. Anyway, I should really let you two go.
No problem.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you again soon. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Take care. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
You too.
Have a great night.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
You too. Bye.